Hi, this is Elaine Hayes. I'm from work at the Laramie County Library in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And this is the class, Genetic Genealogy, or Do You Know Your Way to DNA? I have worked for the Laramie County Library for about 22 years, close to 22 years now, 21 and a half, and have been teaching genealogy classes most of that time. This class is going to be about how to use your DNA test results to enrich your family history research. So we're not going to talk a whole lot about the science of DNA but we're going to talk about once you've got your results, how do you find those matches that'll help you break down some of the brick walls in your genealogy. And I'm going to talk about autosomal tests, which are the tests that DNA tests that look at all your 23 pairs of chromosomes at a very basic level. So, but it does get a little technical, even though it is at a basic level. But you can interrupt me if I really confuse you, or save your questions to the end, whatever you'd like. And that goes for Pat too. If you'd like to unmute yourself and ask a question, that's fine. Thank you very much, and we'll get started. We're going to jump right into DNA genealogy. Oh, okay. Angie's going to share my PowerPoint. Sorry, I hadn't done that yet. Okay, we're going to jump right into DNA genealogy. I'm not going to talk about how to do genealogy. I know Elizabeth has already worked on a genealogy for a couple of years. We do have some basic genealogy books, and I teach a basic genealogy class. And I have some handouts too about basic genealogy if you want to talk about that, but that's a whole nother class, so we're gonna not talk about that right now. But I did want to mention that Ancestry Library Edition, which is the library version of Ancestry.com, is free for you to use at home if you have internet access at home until December 31st, 2021. I haven't heard that they've expanded access into home access, free home access into 2022, but they might. They did this because of COVID, and then a lot of libraries were closed. Okay, now Angie's caught up with me. How you get there is you go to gowild.net and you'll enter your library card number and PIN. If you have any trouble with that, call up the library and we'll help you out. These are the types of DNA genealogy tests. Most of them that you will do these days are autosomal tests that look at all your chromosomes, your 23 pairs, your 22 autosomal chromosomes, and your pair of X and Y, the sex chromosomes too. Look at all those chromosomes. Some of the older tests were either Y chromosome tests or mitochondrial tests. And the Y chromosome test, of course, can only be done by people that have a Y chromosome, men. But the mitochondrial DNA test can be done, anyone can take that test because we all have mitochondrial DNA. But the Y chromosome test is going to tell you about your paternal line, your father's line. And it kind of basically follows the inheritance of your last name. So a lot of people do that for tracing surnames. And the mitochondrial trace your maternal line, your mother's line on back. And both mitochondrial DNA and the Y chromosome DNA don't change a lot over the generations. They don't mutate a lot. So they're pretty much close to the same as hundreds, thousands, even years ago. So these are your ancient ancestry markers. You know, you can find out ancient, how your family moved out of Africa into the Middle East, into Asia, to Europe, whatever. You know, you can kind of trace that sort of ancient ancestry. But we're going to mostly talk about autosomal tests, the tests that test all of your chromosomes.
Is that maternal or more expensive?
Yeah, it depends. It depends. Some of them it's included. Elizabeth asked if it was more expensive to do those. Some testing companies include the autosomal and the Y chromosome testing, like 23andMe does, I think. Ancestry does not. It includes, it's just your autosomal test, looking at all the chromosomes, but not mitochondrial. Okay, these are the different kind of collection methods. I think most people know it's not a blood test or anything. It's a spit test or a cheek swab test. And this is kind of what the different collection methods look like. There's a box there you get from Ancestry with a little tube in there, and it gives you information about how you're supposed to spit it to what line. And the main thing is you have to follow the instructions and make sure you register that number, because that's the only way that test is connected to you, is by that number. So you don't want to send it off without registering that number. And that's pretty much the same thing with the other tests too. They will give you instructions and tell you what to do, and you just need to register on their website. What's that? Yes, yes. Angie asked if it was a privacy thing. Yes, it is. So basically, the testing companies don't know anything about you. They just know they've got this test that they're going to run a DNA test on, and it's associated with this number. So they don't know anything about you. It's sent in anonymously.
So it's not going to be sent to the insurance?
No. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. But consider those privacy implications of your DNA test, okay? Comparison shop, if you're looking at different companies, read what they say about their privacy. The big 6 companies, which are Ancestry, 23andMe, Family Tree DNA, Living DNA, MyHeritage, and National Geographic, I put in there as part of the big 6. You can choose your own account, the options to your account. Sometimes you have to opt in for sharing. You know, you want DNA matches, so, you know, you'll have to opt into that. You can opt into research. This is medical research, and that's also, nobody knows your name or where you live or anything. It's just that this, you know, they're just using your DNA results for medical research of different kinds. If you have a concern, of course, you can report it to the FTC, consumer.ftc.gov, if you have a concern about a DNA company. But there are federal laws already out there that protect your DNA. GINA, the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act, which was passed way back in 2008, it protects you from being treated unfairly because of a difference in your DNA of some kind, okay? HIPAA basically protects all kinds of medical information from medical providers and insurance companies and stuff, like charging you more and things like that. The Affordable Care Act, the pre-existing condition clause, you know, if your DNA condition is already known, your genetic condition, the Affordable Care Act will protect that from an insurance company from maybe charging you more because of your genetic difference. Okay, why would you want to use DNA in genealogy? Well, one thing is you do get those ethnicity maps that tells you about your geographic or ethnic origins. So it tells you the countries of origin of your ancestors. It can confirm that your family tree that you've already worked on, doing old-fashioned genealogy for many, many years, reflects your actual ancestry. You know, whether you did a good job with that. If you've got DNA matches to that great-great-great-grandfather, you know, and lots of them, well, then he probably really is your great-great-great-grandfather. And it'll help you break down brick walls so you can find a common ancestor with another DNA tester that lies beyond that brick wall, and maybe they have a tree that's filled out a little bit more than you, and you can figure out who is that brick wall ancestor that you can't find. Matching with your genetic distant cousin, this is, you can help each other out. And I'll show you some examples of how I've matched with people in other countries, for instance, that have helped me do that genealogy that it would be hard for me to do because I don't speak Swedish or German or French or whatever. So. Okay, what the DNA test can't do. They won't just reveal your whole ancestry chart. Unfortunately, you still have to do some work. They can help prove a distant relationship, but can't disprove it. And this usually comes up with people who are looking for maybe a Native American ancestor or a famous ancestor of some kind. So that's a good reason to have somebody else in your family, like a full sibling or a parent or something on that line that you're looking into, also test. Because the parent is one generation closer to that person, and your full sibling is going to get a little bit different arrangement of genes than you got. So maybe, or I said, you know, I guess genes, different arrangement of DNA than you got, even though it's 50% the same, it's a different 50%. And they might have a marker that you didn't get. They won't reveal exactly where all your distant ancestors lived or what specific group of people they belong to. And this often comes up with people who are looking for, again, a Native American ancestor or an African ancestor, and they're looking for a very specific tribe or something. And it'll give you an area of the world that they came from, maybe, hopefully. But they're actually comparing that with people who live in that area now, for instance, in Africa. And people have moved around in Africa in the last 400 years. So, you know, but it gives you a good idea, but maybe doesn't answer all your questions. But we're getting closer to this all the time. When I first started doing learning about DNA genealogy, they said, oh no, it won't tell you if you have a Native American ancestor at all. And now it's like, oh yeah, we can do that, no problem. Okay, this is for AncestryDNA, which is one of the biggest. They have something like 13 million people that have done DNA tests with AncestryDNA. And these are all the different regions that they're looking at. And I noticed some places that were missing in here. If you notice, Argentina, there's nothing. Looks like China, there's almost nothing. There's a couple African countries that are missing, and France, which I thought was weird. And I looked into that because I have some French ancestors, and France actually, it's illegal to recreational DNA tests are illegal in France still. And it's one of the last European countries to have that law. Germany actually used to have that law just like maybe 10 years ago, but they got rid of it. And it all dates back to World War II and, you know, people of certain ethnicities being hunted down and, you know, killed off. So there's still some sensitivity there that, like, why do you want to know? Right, exactly. What are you going to do with that information? So, and that might be the case in places in China and Africa also. But, okay. I just want to also point out that Africa, there's 112 regions in Africa. In the Americas, 136. In Asia, 57. In Europe, 1,277. There's definitely a European bias of probably people that have already taken the test. Oceania, 12 regions. And in West Africa, 34 regions. So we have Africa and West Africa separately. Okay, interesting. And that increases all the time. This is a new slide because I realized that it had gone up since the last time, a few months ago that I took a picture of this slide. One thing is good to know is that you've got thousands of ancestors that it's looking at. So your DNA is being divided up into all these little parts. And that's why it just decreases, your percentages decrease a lot when you go back. So if you're looking for an ancestor that's quite a ways back, again, example of you're looking for a Native American ancestor who you think is a great, great, great grandparent. Well, there's, it's going quite a ways back, and there's less percentage of that person in your DNA. Another thing to remember is that, of course, you get one chromosome from your father and one chromosome from your mother, but they get mixed up or recombined before you get that chromosome from your mother or father. So it's not a duplicate of the same chromosome that your dad has. It's basically a mixture of that chromosome, some from his mom and some from his dad. So you've got a different mixture. Yeah. Right, yes. So then that happens every generation. So you don't, otherwise you would be passing on just that chromosome that you got from your father, who he's passing it on exactly the same as the one he got from his father, but no, every generation it gets mixed up. So, yeah, except the Y chromosome, which is the reason why the Y chromosome doesn't change, because there's not, there's not another Y chromosome. There's men are X and Y. So the X chromosome does do some recombining. So women get more of that. Okay, this is a slide I got from many years ago, but I thought it was interesting because the woman that this is her in the far bottom right corner that I was watching her PowerPoint online, and I took a screenshot. Her dad and her mom up at the top took an AncestryDNA check, and then they had 5 children. And you can see how different all the children are. We have from, let's see, 42 to 73% Great Britain. I see 18% up to 37% Ireland. So it varies that much of the kids. Yep. And that's the question, the answer why, when I first took a test, my brother's like, why don't we have exactly the same ethnicity? Well, we do in reality, but remember, these are estimates, and they're looking at markers in your, that they know about so far in your chromosomes. And some of us get more of them than the other when they get recombined. This is still my ancestry DNA. And so, I have my ethnicity estimate, and I often warn people this is for entertainment purposes only, because it is an estimate, and it also changes, hopefully gets better as they get more people in their database tested and, scientific discoveries and things like that. But I can look at my ethnicity estimate. I've got my DNA matches. And I have little blue blobs over their faces because I didn't ask all these people if I could share it with people on the internet. The ancestry through lines will actually show me how I'm related to some of these people, who are our common ancestor, which is really kind of cool, and give me some hints, maybe for ancestors that aren't in my tree, but are in one of my DNA matches tree. So I can, add some new things. And there's also traits and stuff. Like this one has nutrition traits, things I can look at. And those are sometimes information they found through those medical research, stuff like that. Okay, this is the DNA story for Elaine Hayes here. And so there's 62% England, Wales, and Northwestern Europe, Ireland and Scotland, 12%, Sweden, 10%, Germanic Europe, 9%, Norway, 4%, France, 3%. And when I first saw that, I thought that sounds pretty good, actually, not close to what I think it should be. And communities, Ancestry also does these communities. And basically, if you have a tree, so I have a genealogy tree that I've worked on for years and years that I connected to my DNA. And they said, okay, you've got a lot of French Canadians in your tree. And of your matches, they've got a lot of French Canadians in their tree too. So then they tell me about the St. Lawrence River French settlers in upper US and Canada, in Quebec and things like that. So I can kind of see the story of that, which is kind of cool. Okay. Oh, and when it opens up, there's more details under this, under the southwestern Quebec, New York, and Vermont French settlers. So I can click on that and find out more of that. And this is basically clicking on all those little dots are a person in my tree or in the trees of one of my genealogy matches, but they cluster. You can see they're living in the same place, close to each other by the Great Lakes and up in Quebec, around Montreal. There's a lot of them around there. And I only get this because I did connect that tree, which is a good idea to connect your tree. It makes things a lot easier. And this is the whole story. It even gives me, okay, that's an immigration story here of how they immigrated from Europe. And some people in my tree, I can find out more about them, if I want to. This is some screenshots of my ethnicity estimates and how it's changed. I took a screenshot and saved those screenshots and kind of compared it. So I still have sort of the same stuff, but it went from 47% England, Wales, and Northwestern Europe to 62%. My French dropped out. My Germanic Europe dropped out and then came back. So that's why I say sometimes it's just for entertainment purposes only, They're interesting for about 15 to 20 minutes, but the real thing that's really interesting is your matches. What's what can really help you with your genealogy. Oh, I think this is another one. Oh, yeah, this is a fourth change in my in my results. So now it went down to 42% England and Northwestern Europe. Then we have Sweden and Denmark, then Wales. That's a new one. But my maiden name is Jones. I know I got some Welsh. So Scotland, Norway, Ireland. So still looks pretty good. although I haven't really found anybody from Ireland, but it's saying 4%. Yeah, there's a lot of Irish around. They get around. Okay, so here's my DNA matches. And I've convinced my daughter and my brother and 2 sisters to all do DNA tests. And they've all actually let me kind of look at and manage their tests, which is kind of nice because they don't want to be bothered with it, basically.
I think that was really
Yes. Yeah, they're like, you're doing genealogy, let you take care of that. So if someone contacts them, they will actually be contacting me. And you'll see that that tree with 4,327 people, that's my tree. I see my sister has a little bit less people, but I probably gave it to her before I found those people. Shared it with her.
So you gave it to your sister and you added more, and it just keeps saying it.
Yeah, it just, I basically shared her this tree and she connected her DNA with this tree and it didn't update hers. It updated mine, but yeah. And then we have close family, like we have, the first 2 are actually it says close family, 2 first cousins. These are my nieces. Yeah, my 2 nieces there. You'll notice underneath that, it says it's shared DNA and it'll say, oh, like, my daughter is 3,464 centimorgans, which is a lot, which is about, it's my daughter, it's about half my DNA that she shares across 64 segments. And, it's 2,000 something for my brother and sisters. The close family goes down to 1,697 centimorgans across 64 segments. Of course, we've all got a common ancestor listed because, it's my parents are our common ancestor. And the little stars and pink and yellow dots, the yellow dots is for my mom's side of the family and the pink dots are for my dad's side of the family. So I've just labeled them and all of these people share both sides of the family. But as I go on down, I have people that are just my dad's side or just my mom's side. And, those that don't have a name or a picture that I can identify, and they don't have a tree, I can go in and look at our shared matches. So who do they match with that I also match with? And that's how I figured out, like, this first and second cousin is on my mom's side and put a yellow dot there. I have some green dots down there at the bottom. I mentioned I had some French Canadians, and the French Canadians are one of these population groups that they call endogamous, which means they married within the same group for a long period of time. So like in the Montreal area, they've been there since 1500 something, and they tended to marry each other, and, for a long period of time. And so I know these people are French Canadians, but I haven't figured out exactly how we're related yet. So, and these third and fourth cousins, these are the people that are really going to help you with your ancestors that are 100 to 300 years ago. So yeah, those 4th to 7th cousins are gold. Usually your first and second cousins, you know how you're related, but you want to go back farther than that. So, and why did okay. I'm trying to figure out why I circled that one at the top. Maybe, yeah. It's got a different, it's got an orange dot, because I actually realized that that it's my mom's side of the family, but I figured out who our shared ancestor was, which was another generation back. It was my great-grandparents. And you'll also notice that BH is managed by G7 Chris. That means that, that I'm matching to BH, but G7 Chris is the person that if I, talk to, I'm going to be talking to G7 Chris. And I also match G7 Chris, but so, because he's a family member. BH does have a tree, which is, it's helpful to find people with trees. You don't always find people, but I clicked on that common ancestor, and this is basically what Ancestry showed me. This is who they think. BH could be your second cousin once removed through Jeremiah Becker and Mary Elizabeth Myers. So that orange dot, that's what that means, is Jeremiah Becker and Mary Elizabeth Myers is our common ancestor. That's my tree. Oh no, that's not my tree. That is somebody else's tree. Is it G7 Chris's tree? Thank you. It says that up in the top corner there.
Oh, I didn't see it.
Yeah.
I do now, though.
But we have Jeremiah Becker and Mary Elizabeth Myers opened up. That's our common ancestor. And I'm descended from well, he's descended from this Louis Jerome Becker, and I'm descended from his sister, basically. All right. Okay, so I wanted to talk to G7 Chris, and I sent him a message. Clicked on that and sent him a message. And says he last signed in 3 to 11 months ago, so it's not too long ago. But he actually answered me. I had a question about DNA circles. The thing that's called through lines, when it first came out in beta testing, it was called DNA circles. And he answered my question, and that was great. So this is how you can kind of talk to each other without, you don't necessarily have to share your real email address or anything personal if you don't want to. You can if you want to. And I have occasionally. Okay, this is Anna Teed was my father's grandmother. So my great grandmother on his mother's side. All I knew about her was that she was born in Sweden, because it said that on the census, and my aunt told me that she was born in Sweden. Her maiden name was Teed, which is a weird, it doesn't sound Swedish, does it? But the Jones side, the family said it was changed and it was originally Anderson. And okay, so I've got somebody that maybe was Anna Anderson. She was a brick wall for a long time, because I'm looking for Anna Andersons from Sweden, and there's thousands of them. I got a little hint eventually from Ancestry that her name might be Hannah Anders' daughter, which makes sense because Sweden, she's a female. She's not Anders' son, she's Anders' daughter. So. And from Kirkafalla, Sweden, and that her father's name was Anders Teed, spelled T-I-D. And that seemed to fit. Like, okay, you could pronounce it, this Tid, T-I-D, maybe you pronounce it Teed, So then I took this DNA test. And I got a match almost right away to Monica Mattsson in Sweden. And Monica said that she just got the result of her DNA test, and I was a 5th to 8th cousin in your tree. I found you have ancestors from Kirkafalla, Sweden, and so have I. Can we find the link I have followed my lines back to the beginning of the 18th century. Hello, thank you, Monica. I said, hi, Monica. The only connection to Sweden that I'm fairly sure of is my great-grandmother, who was Hannah Matilda Anders' daughter. Her father was Anders Gustav T. So that I'd figured out already by traditional genealogy. And they were from Kirkefalla, Skaraborg, Sweden. They all immigrated to the US and took the name Teed, T-E-E-D, from T-I-D, I assume, which I looked up. In Swedish, it means time. I'm telling this woman from Sweden that, so it's a little embarrassing, but, or so I Googled. So I'm assuming it was an occupational name, a clock or watchmaker. That was my guess. Hannah's mother was named Gustava, Peter's daughter, Norell or Nozel. Let's see. She says that their grandfather's mother came from Kirkefalla, Katharina Haken's daughter. My grandmother also had some roots from this parish. I'm sure it takes some time to find the connection, but I will try. It didn't actually take her very long. It was like the next day she came back with it. About the name Teed, it could be time. It can also be from a creek passing the village of Kirkefalla, nowadays the Tibro. The creek is Teeden. I have a sister living in the village Tibro. Do you know the birthplace for Gustava Norell? I told her Anders Gustav Andersson Teed was born 30 December 1845 in Kirkefalla, blah, blah, blah. Let's see. And I did tell her when Gustava, Peter's daughter, Nozel, was born. And because she's Peter's daughter, I assume her father's name was Peter. And she did get back to me. She says, I have found the connection. Anders Gustav Andersson Teed is grandfather's half-brother's son to Monica. Whatever, okay. Ancestry says possible range 5th to 8th cousin, confidence moderate. Send your email address and I'll have ancestors back to Haken Anderson in 1684. His wife was Karen Anders' daughter. So anyway, I sent her my real email address. She sent me a document that had a family tree basically with all these people in it. And our common ancestor was this Katharina Haken's daughter. And I'm descended from her first husband, Sven Svensson. But Sven only lived to be 27 years old, and Katharina remarried. And Monica was actually descended from her second husband. So she gave me all this information going back all the way. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 more generations back in Sweden, which would have been really hard for me to figure out. So that's why talking to your distant genealogy matches can be really helpful. This is Anders and Gustava Teed. And during this, I actually figured out that that was exactly why, that, you know, because of the river. And there were probably a lot of Anders Andersons living in that area. And he was the Anders Anderson that lived by the Teed. So, but this is a cool picture. They're kind of dressed up, I think. Could even be, and young, could even be a wedding picture or something. But that one came from Family Search, connected to them. So I have no idea who put it on Family Search, but I stole it. Just recently, so this was last year, I think, Louise Enochsen, also from Sweden, contacted me. And she was wanting to know about her family that immigrated to America. So it's like, well, my Swedish obviously immigrated to America. So in this case, I figured out our connection, and it was actually to Might be the same people. But, okay, the Johnson line. I told her to look at her Johnson line, and our common ancestral couple was actually Anders Johnson and Maria Jan's daughter. And I would have never known that those were my ancestors if Monica hadn't clued me in on that. But so I got to help out somebody. Somebody helped me out, and then I could return the favor and help out somebody in Sweden. This is what the AncestryDNA through lines look like. These are all my great grandparents. And well, except for Gayette and Anna Matilda Teed, I have pictures for everybody, which is kind of cool. In this case, we're going to kind of look at Catherine Selbeck and have a connection there. But this is what I have a DNA match. If you see at the bottom there, there's Sarah. And above her, well, there's 2 generations of people because of the dotted lines. I mean, these are people that are in Sarah's tree, but not in my tree. Okay, so I'm over here. So there's Catherine, and then August, and Lucille's my mom, and then me. But one of August Bernard's Haug's sisters is Rose Helen Haug. And descended from Rose Helen Haug, eventually you get to Sarah. So I can go in there and evaluate it, basically say, does this make sense? Do I want to put it in my chart tree and add this information to my tree if I like? And I've got some other matches, like 3 DNA matches under Ida Mary Haug, 4 under Anna Marie, and 2 under Bernard Pius Haug. So, and there's more because they had 14 kids. So that's why I have so many of the yellow dot people from my mom's side of the family. Here's 4th great grandparents. And you'll see I've got some suggested 4th great grandparents that are not in my tree. We've got the green people with the dotted lines around them. These are folks that I could add to my tree. So I can make my tree go back another generation if I think these are right. And ignore the end. Whoever's tree this is, they put a little picture of the end, which I think is weird because obviously this is not the end. This person had parents and they had parents. So yeah, that's not me, that's somebody else. But you know, we have Lisa John's daughter up there, who's one of the common ancestral line of Louisa that talked to me from Sweden. I don't know what that means, the end. It does make them hard to find. Yeah, they must have, if they're supposedly my ancestor, they had to have children. So, okay, this is 23andMe. I've also done a test at 23andMe, and it's 23andMe is more focused on your health information, but it does do cousin matching and does some other things like it gave me results for my mitochondrial haplogroup and things like that too. What do you mean results for you? Yeah, basically they must have looked at my mitochondrial too from my sample. Because it doesn't change a lot, there's a limited number of haplogroups or groups that they've identified that have the same mitochondrial DNA. And yeah, the mothers back to Eve. Yes. Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I have 53 ancestry reports, but this is kind of, you know, I can go in and look at reports for health things. This is my ancestry composition. So we have another, this one says 41% French and German. This is different. They're going to be different than Ancestry because they have different computer programs that they look at for your ancestry and different groups of people too. 23andMe has millions, but they have only about half as much as Ancestry. You know, I said something like 13 million. It's like 6 or 7 million for 23andMe, which is a lot of people, but still. So we have French and German, British and Irish, Scandinavian, and there's more, a list of DNA relatives.
But the report looks like this then?
And you can go in and get more. Oh, it tells me about Neanderthal ancestry, my percentage of, well, basically not a percentage, but it'll tell me, what do you call it? Percentile, like you have more Neanderthal ancestry than 86% people we've tested, for instance. And you're going to have Neanderthal ancestry if you have primarily European ancestry, because that's where the Neanderthals lived and, you know, reproduced with the Cro-Magnon people, so, which were the early humans. So that's where my maternal haplogroup, the one below that, that's where I can look at to see what is my maternal haplogroup. And there's a nice picture of Marie Antoinette, because apparently I have the same maternal haplogroup as Marie Antoinette. Pretty cool. Paternal haplogroup, you can click on that because I'm like, oh, you're going to tell me my maternal haplogroup? How's that working? But I clicked on that and it said, you haven't, you're a woman. You don't have a Y chromosome. So I'm like, all right, okay. This is more detailed. This is still 23andMe, but I like the way they've broken down my French and German. It's telling me where exactly in Germany did that DNA come from. So we have Baden-Württemberg, Germany, and someplace in Switzerland. British and Irish, we have Greater London, County Donegal, Ireland, and there's 12 other regions. But the top ones, the first ones are the ones that are more likely. And I know that I have people that came from Baden-Württemberg, Germany, which is great. You know, that fits in. This Östergötland County, Sweden, that's right around where that Skaraborg, Sweden, that we're Kirkefalla, Skaraborg, Sweden is. And it's also close to Norway, which is why I keep getting these Norway results, I think. This one's got me a little bit of Finnish and some Southern European, Spanish and Portuguese, West Asian and North African, 1.3%. And what they're talking about is Cypriot, which is Cyprus, which to me sounds like Greek, but so that area is 1.3%, which I've seen in other tests. Like I think at one point, even Ancestry gave me a little 1% Greek or something. So that's interesting. I'd like to find that connection. So this is, if you click on your French and German, you get more details. It gives me the areas most likely that the highly likely matches that where people came from. It says Baden-Württemberg, Bavaria, Mecklenburg, North Rhine, Rhineland.
Still notice that it follows that French border.
It follows the French border because I know I have some French too with the French Canadians. Although looking into the history of French Canada, it's not all French people that immigrated there, but then they'd start speaking French. So there could have been Irish people that immigrated there and started speaking French.
So do you speak French?
No, I wish. I tried.
That would be so nice.
Yeah, I wish speaking French would be genetic. There's even a timeline. This is still 23andMe. They've got a lot of cool little tools.
I can't wait for you.
Yeah. And it tell me, okay, for my Scandinavian, we think that came from about 1900. Your most common Scandinavian ancestor was in this area, this time period, 1840 to 1900. And that's pretty much right on to when they immigrated.
Wow.
Yeah. The Cypriot, we're talking back there in, 1700s.
In 60s.
Yeah. This is a DNA browser, or a chromosome browser, I mean. So for each chromosome, I've kind of, there's a number 1 chromosome at the top, but I just didn't get that in the screen. But so of course you have 23 chromosomes and a pair. So there's 46 chromosomes, but 2 of each kind. And this sort of shows me, mine looks very monochromatic, very blue, because it's 98.6% European. My purple is that West Asian, North African, Cypriot, and it tells me exactly it's on chromosome number 9.
Wow.
And only obviously came from one of my parents and not the other one. I wish I knew which one.
Yeah, that would be good.
And you can actually click on one of these colors and get more details. And since I showed you my Scandinavian, so I click on Scandinavian and I see what chromosomes they came from. And again, it looks like, with the exception of number 13, it's on one chromosome, but not the other one. So that's my dad's chromosome.
Oh, okay. That's what I was saying. How do you know which one?
Because he's the only one with a Scandinavian ancestor. He had the great grandmother, or the grandmother, my great grandmother, that was from Sweden. But interesting thing is chromosome number 8 there, that whole thing looks Scandinavian.
Yeah.
And I think I was telling Angie earlier that usually they recombine, but sometimes they don't. Sometimes, and some different chromosomes or different areas stick together more, which is why you have these centimorgan and the largest centimorgan link. It's because they kind of stuck together, when they recombined. Sometimes you actually inherit a duplicate of your parents' chromosome. So I'm thinking I might have gotten a duplicate of my dad's chromosome 8. And maybe he got a duplicate from his mom, who got a duplicate from her mom. So that.
But this is not one counting or father where it doesn't change. This just happens in states.
It just didn't do that recombining. And that happens sometimes at a certain percentage of time, and for different chromosomes, it happens different times. But I need to look into that a little more, but I just thought it was kind of interesting. Here's my DNA relatives. We're still at 23andMe. And it'll give, I can click on them and get more information.
What does it mean by once removed?
Your once removed is when you're not the same generation as that person, basically. So, your cousins, your full cousins, you share the same grandparents, right? If the same couple, obviously you're shared same couple, but for them, it's a great grandparent, but for you, it's a grandparent. You're once removed from them. Yeah.
I have a question about that chromosome 8.
Yeah.
If you had your dad's DNA, would it show that for sure? That chromosome as a duplicate, maybe?
Oh, yeah, like the Y one.
I wish I had my, yeah.
Or on the other hand, DNA, it wouldn't necessarily show up for sure.
If you
But it
have
might.
your parents, or at least one of them, that test at the same company, you can theoretically do that, figure out which chromosome is from which parent, and compare it with things like DNA browsers and things like that. So that's another reason to, if you've got a parent alive, get them tested. Yeah. So yeah, and I'm not a DNA expert, so I hope I didn't say anything wrong there, but you know, just by looking at the chromosome browser, it looks like maybe that happened. Okay, so this is just showing the genetic relationship to Mary. I know who this is. She is my first cousin. I took out her last name because I didn't want to, yeah, for her privacy, because I didn't tell her I was doing a DNA genealogy class and recording it to the cloud. But so it's just basically showing you, we share the same grandparents, but my mom and her mom are sisters. Obviously.
Now I have a question. With 23andMe, once you do this, do you have to, like Ancestry, you have to pay each month or something to get access to it? Is 23andMe the same way?
No.
Is that a one-time deal?
No, it's pretty much a one-time deal. I think you might be able to pay more for more bells and whistles and more health information and things like that. But I haven't. I just paid for the test and I log in and yeah.
Yeah, but that's the basic thing.
Yeah, but it's a lot of cool basic stuff.
It is.
And here is my the Cypriot stuff. Oh, I showed this for my maternal haplogroup. Mary and I have the same maternal haplogroup, which we should.
Right.
Because
same mother.
Well, no, we don't have the same mother, but we have my mother and her mother were sisters, right? It's a maternal line.
Maternal line.
Yes, right. So yeah.
The women were related.
Yeah. Descendants of my mother's brothers are going to have different haplogroups because they have a mother from a different line. So, you know what I mean? Because it's only the female line. You get it from your mom, always. And of course, it says that neither one of us have a paternal haplogroup.
That's the father, right?
Yeah. And
but you couldn't have like a brother or someone do that.
Yes, in fact, I do have a brother, and I'm thinking about sending him an 23andMe test.
That's what I was about to say.
Exactly for this reason.
But I think if I do it, then I think my dad might do this. His found this one.
Ah, okay. And the health information is it's more interested if you're not that much into genealogy or whatever. But you can do genealogy. This is a tree. Basically, they gave me a tree with my matches on it. And what they surmised from my matches would be how they're related to me. And I filled in the names, I have some DNA relatives down here, and they're like, hey, these are from a sibling of your mother, and these people are twice removed from me because.
So they're your great grandparents, you should, if they're twice removed.
Well, the same couple, it's my grandparents, but it's their great grandparents for this one. This one would be great grandparent. And the reason why is because this couple again had 12 children, and my mom is one of the youngest, and she was 40 when I was born. So, so I'm a lot younger than most of my cousins. Most of my cousins have great grandchildren and great grandchildren and stuff already. So I'm a slow on that. No grandchildren for me. Let's see. But anyway, I filled in what I knew.
So if you had children, then that would be underneath the Elaine Hayes. Is that what that means?
If she tested, if she tested with 23andMe, there'd be a little line down here, and it would say, because it'd know that that's my child. Okay. And then I could add in my husband, because he hasn't tested, but my ex-husband, her father.
And since Ancestry and 23andMe don't talk to each other, they don't show up.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with that. I have some families in Ancestry, some of the 23andMe, but
Yeah.
none of them, nobody has done both.
You can, yeah, and you can't. Sometimes you can take a ancestry tree and put it into another database, but not 23andMe. 23andMe doesn't do that. You have to create a whole new one, which is what I was kind of doing here with my DNA people.
Now, how do they do it? Like when they found that serial killer for 40 years? Is that they take the DNA and upload it? Is it there somewhere?
Well, they're finding cousin matches, distant cousin matches, and then figuring out their common ancestor and what kids these common ancestors had, and yeah, doing traditional kind of genealogy and looking for living people, which is different than genealogy too. It's what your private detectives do.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay, but we have a slide about that later on. And a lot of adoptees will do DNA genealogy these days. And this is what probably the only time I will recommend something is that you do a test at Ancestry and 23andMe if you're trying to find your birth parents, because those are the two big ones. And you want to be in a biggest pool of people that might match you as you can find. Then you can take your results and put those from one of them, Ancestry or 23andMe, into Family Tree DNA, MyHeritage, and GEDmatch. These are smaller companies that allow you to transfer a test from another company into them. So they have a bigger pool too. You know, they're basically wanting a big pool. And Ancestry and 23andMe won't let you do that. You have to test with them to be in their pool. So it'd be great if you come up with somebody that says that this is your father or mother or full sibling or whatever, or half sibling, then that's really easy to figure out who your parents are. But chances are you're not going to get that. You might get a second cousin or a third cousin or a fourth cousin or something like that. And then you're going to have to do some work to figure, contact them or do some work to figure out their family tree. So find your closest matches, and those matches with trees will really help too. Sometimes you can triangulate. So you take your closest match with the tree and your closest match and you, and see how all three of you are related. Yeah. And the next slide actually gives a little bit more detail. You can create a tree basically with what you find out, and eventually attach it to your DNA results to see if you have a common ancestor. And then try to contact your matches, which is easier said than done, because, and I've gone to webinars or whatever, where they say, make sure you've done everything you can with what's available before you contact them, because they may panic. You know, you're saying, I think you're my cousin and I was adopted, and maybe that makes them panic a little bit. You know, they're like, oh, you know, I don't want to get involved in this. So maybe they don't want to talk to you, but you've taken a look at their tree already before, because they could make it private. Because they could make it private, or they could pull the tree or something. But you know, most people these days are a little, I think, more open. You know, that I hope. Most of the adoptees I've talked to have had good results. You know, when they find a half sibling or something, and they usually they'll say, "Oh yes, we know. We've been looking for you too." Yeah. Okay, so this is pedigree triangulation. You look at your matches and you group them into four groups. And these four groups represent your four grandparents, okay? So
So you're saying you do that or the system?
Well, it depends on what you're looking at. The system will kind of do it, but you know, I've had to go through and I like put yellow dots and pink dots and whatever. So I'm basically grouping them.
And then it's just accumulating.
Yeah, so you're grouping all the yellow people are related to you and they're related to each other. All the blue people are related to each other, all the green ones and all the red ones, okay? So that's, they represent your 4 grandparents, or at least the parents of your 4 grandparents, your great-grandparent couple.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
I got that.
And these, if you watch Game of Thrones, these are Game of Thrones people. Yeah.
I do not, so I can't.
Yeah.
I just know she was getting animated when I'm missing something.
Yeah. So you take that and you find, you arrange them with the folks that are you're most closely related to on top. So the largest amount of centimorgans. And so for let's see, we're trying to figure out who the yellow couple is, those yellow great-grandparents. So you take that closest match and the closest match that has a tree and you kind of, you know, triangulate it. That's hard to explain, but I do have a whole book about this Adoptee's Guide to DNA Testing. Yeah, which you can check out from the library. But your closest match with the tree and your shared match, if they had a tree too, you could see that they have a common ancestral couple. So, and they're probably descended from different children of those, but they're, so you can kind of put together a tree. You could put that couple, I can't see who they are. A Targaryen and Baratheon couple.
What you say?
Yeah, into your tree as one of your grandparents or great-grandparents. All right, I don't know how we're doing with time. Oh, okay. We're doing okay. What else can you do with your DNA results? This is actually what my raw DNA looks like. And it goes on for many, many, many pages. This is all chromosome 1 and a specific position, a specific pair, protein pair, at this position. So there's an IV position, and G and G means that's guanine, 2 guanines at the little, you know, this is getting into DNA, but this is basically what it looks like. It'll say A, C, G, or T at those different places. And that's what you put in as your raw DNA. This is also like a base pair or single nucleotide polymorphism, which sometimes is referred to as a SNP. So if you hear somebody say about SNPs, that's a SNP.
Okay, yeah, because they do a lot with those these days.
Yeah. So I put one of, I think, my AncestryDNA results, my raw DNA, into a place called DNA Land. And, you know, if you're doing this like a third-party site like this, you know, make sure you look at the privacy. And DNA Land was a research site. So, and they tell you that up front, that they wanting your DNA because they're gonna do some research on your raw DNA. So
what kind of research are you doing?
Health research and things like that. So, but they'll give you some an ancestry composition and things like that. So there's other things you can do. Oh, and matches. This is the match to a 4th cousin, and his last name is Goyette or Guyette, which is my French Canadian surname. And it's spelled two different ways with a U or a Y. It depends on, it's how you pronounce it in French versus English. Guyette is more how you would pronounce it, but spell it with an O in French. And you can see like a chromosome browser over there on the far right. So you can see that's where we match. And I have somebody, PAGE, also, I think a French Canadian. I matched that person down there on a different chromosome. But it tells me your total shared length of centimorgans, your longest segment and things like that. That's why I gave you that shared centimorgan chart with the pretty colors on it, is if you were at a site like this and you're like, why is it saying this is a fourth cousin? And you can say, oh, okay, 73.68 centimorgans would fit in that chart under fourth cousin. Yeah. Oh, okay, this is still DNA land. It gives me some trait predictions. It'll tell me that, you know, whether I drink coffee or if I, you know, have been to college. It's kind of interesting. My percentage, they think, and, you know.
So they don't know that you drink coffee, or it's just a yes.
Yeah, basically it'll tell me the results and then it asks me, is this correct?
Oh, okay, gotcha.
You know, we think that you like coffee. And I'd say, yes, I actually do like coffee. You know, we think you don't like to wake up early in the morning. It's like, no, you're right. I don't like to wake up early in the morning. Yeah. So they get some feedback. It says likely to have blue eyes. I say my eyes are green, but you know, it gives me this information from my DNA. GEDmatch, you asked about the finding the serial killers and things like that. The website they used was GEDmatch.
That's why that name is familiar to me.
Yeah.
I've seen several of them.
GEDmatch let you put in DNA from any source into GEDmatch. So raw DNA from any source, including, as it turned out, things collected at crime labs. You know. Yes, they do it a lot now. So raw DNA, and they were doing the same thing. They were trying to find cousin matches, and then they you know, contact these people. Yeah, they probably did. Yeah, and I actually talked to a lady that does this here in Wyoming, and she solves cold cases in Wyoming using DNA. It used to be that when you went into GEDmatch, you had to opt out of comparison with law enforcement, but now it's an opt-in. So you have to, so it's just different. You know, if you want your DNA to be part of that pool, then you have to opt in. So their pool doesn't work as well as it used to when they had everybody.
Yeah, because I was like, it was just amazing that guy got away with it so long.
Yeah, and I think it's great. So actually, I let law enforcement use my DNA. Yeah, because it's not only finding rapists and serial killers, but they're finding Jane Doe bodies or whatever, figuring out who they are and things like that. So yeah. This is just one of the tools at GEDmatch, and you know, it always looks a little bit different, but they're kind of looking at the world in a different way and your sample in a different way. This is actually another one also at GEDmatch. Here's my DNA matches. And I've blocked out a lot of stuff because we have their full name.
Oh, gotcha.
And their honest to God real emails over there.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but these are people that have opted in to matching. Because so they're probably serious genealogists that want to, you know, that want to find matches.
I see the red too. Do not create mass mailing lists. So.
Yeah. You know, don't bother these people unless you really, if you really think they're going to help you with your genealogy. But you'll see we have total son of organs. It's not telling me how I'm related to this person. So I'm going to have to look at like the that chart to figure that out if I wanted to contact Dorothy. Actually, none of these people are a close enough match that I think it would work worthwhile. Yeah. They do traits and stuff. And I thought it was kind of interesting because it thinks my eyes are not that blue, they're more green. But all of those are the different areas they're looking at for what your eye color is. You know, I don't know if you ever had genetics in high school or something, and they would say, well, blue is recessive and brown is dominant. And so, you know, but it's obviously more complicated than that. And this is sort of a chromosome, different way of looking at a chromosome browser. You'll see that the red is North Atlantic. They're talking about Northern European, like British, Irish, whatever. So that's why I got lots of red. But I also got some Baltic, that's Scandinavian, and things like that. There's some brown, Western Mediterranean. I don't think I have any Amerindian. Maybe I do. Wait,
yeah, no, you asked me.
Chromosome 1, maybe. Interesting. But that's just chromosome 1 and chromosome 2. And I might be a combination of both my chromosomes on 1 and 2. MyHeritage is another place where you can put your raw DNA in. MyHeritage.com. And this is, you can create, I don't pay them either. I just put my raw DNA for free. And I also connected my family tree to it. And MyHeritage keeps telling me my family tree is too large for a free account. And I'm like, so yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not going to subscribe because that's not why I did it. So, and I get matches. They send me emails that I've got a new match. I created a family site. So I have, this is my mom's wedding picture. And you know, I blocked out stuff because they like, from my family tree, they're like, these are your sisters. You can invite them to be part of MyHeritage if you want. It'll tell me when my cousins have a birthday and things like that.
Nice reminder.
Yes. This is MyHeritage ethnicity estimate.
100% European.
100% European. But it does say South Europe, 8%, which is weird. That seems like a lot. The other one was like 1.3%.
Yeah, it was really low.
Yeah, and this is like Greece. So more than once have I heard that I might have a Greek ancestor about 400 years ago. 300 to 400 years ago. So, and this gives me my ethnicity estimates and some of my top matches. Actually, this guy, we've seen him before. He came up on a match somewhere else. But I had his full name, the city he lived in, his email, his parents' names were in there. And I'm like, well, that's a lot more than you want to share. So watch out for things like that. So first cousin twice removed to fourth cousin. Yes, we have 5 minutes. Okay, I have 10 slides.
Oh, whoops.
All right. Okay, but this is, I can look, Mr. Hammond and I, how we're related. These are like he has a tree too. These are my names. These are his names. see if we have common surnames listed. And DNA match quality, 46.8 centimorgans. It's not a lot still. Definitely enough to say, yes, we have a common ancestor. This is his family tree. I've had to put boxes over everything because, like you said, there were some living people and stuff. He was born in 1991. I think I blocked out his birth date. He's young. He's a young guy. These are emails that they send me. I have some new smart matches. Youre Enochsen from Norway, Mike Shires from the United Kingdom. One thing about MyHeritage is it does have a lot more non-Americans, from Europe. The different 23andMe and Ancestry are big enough that they have, people from all over the world, but some of them, MyHeritage has more Europeans than Americans. This is still MyHeritage. This is just another spelling of Gayet, Gauger, or whatever, I don't speak French, but this is just another variation of the same name from Quebec. Another website. This is before I did 23andMe and I wanted to get some health information. I put my raw DNA in this Prometheus.com, and this one, it's about $15. It's $12 to $16 for a health report, depending on how much you want. I think it's more if you have a 23andMe profile, because there's more information already on the 23andMe for health than, for some reason, than Ancestry. But you put in your raw DNA, and it comes back with a report, and you pay your money. Comes back with a report that's available for you to download for like 30 days or something. So you've got that time for you to download it and save it and whatever, and then it just disappears off the internet. So
you don't have to write anyone hacking.
Yeah. And basically it goes through different things. And this is just like one of the first ones. And it tells me this little one, this SNP, that's, one little pair, has been seen to be show me a risk of osteoarthritis and bipolar disorder, and how much, I have to worry about that. This is what that shared centimorgan project looks like. And this is actually, the shared centimorgan project was created by this guy who wrote this book, Guide to DNA Testing and Genetic Genealogy, which we have in the library. His name is Blaine Benninger, and he has a blog called The Genetic Genealogist online. And he kind of put this all together. He's pretty smart guy originally. So you can figure out your shared centimorgans. If you look at this, you've got yourself is right there, but siblings, cousins and half first cousins, second cousins once removed, whatever. But this is your shared centimorgan amount, and this is the range. So you can see there the average is 125 for a half first cousin twice removed, but it could range anywhere from 16 to 269. So when I said like my person with 46 centimorgans was not very related to me, could have been I don't know if I have a lot of halves, but could be in the third cousin once removed range, which I guess is closer than I thought. All right, going over a little time. I just recommend if you want to do some more finding out about your DNA, you can go to the fhguide.com or the Family History Guide. And one of the things you can look is into basic genetics and research or whatever, learn about DNA testing. Or you could check out one of these books like Your DNA Guide by Diane Southard, Adoptee's Guide, or the Blaine Bettinger book that we have here at the library. So these sources, I think, are all in the handouts, but there's a lot. 23andMe, Ancestry, DNA Explained is just what it sounds like, a place to find out about DNA. DNA Painter is about, you can put your raw DNA in there and get those Chromosome Browser like pictures. Family Tree DNA, just another DNA website. Genetic Genealogist, that's Blaine Bettinger's blog. International Society of Genetic Genealogy Wiki. So there is a society that they have articles about genetic genealogy. Living DNA is another genealogy company. Living DNA is out of the UK, so British or originally. No, I was going to say maybe it's out of Israel. So I'm sorry that I don't know for sure, but there was one that was out of Israel. It might be Living DNA. So maybe Jewish genealogy would be something at Living DNA. MyHeritage, we talked about. Prometheus is the one, the health. FamilySearch.org, that's the LDS Family History Library's website, which is free. So great to try. Family History Guide. That's a way to learn about genealogy. Blaine Bettinger's Shared Centimorgan Project at thegeneticgenealogist.com. And right on that first page is a link to the Shared Centimorgan Project. You can open it up and print it in full color like I did. Okay, if you have any questions, you can open it up for questions. Is Pat still there? We lost her, okay. All right, Elizabeth, I think I will turn off. Yeah, stop the recording, please. If you have any questions, we could even maybe go live. Yeah, and you can stop the share too. Stopped recording, okay, now stop the share.